Welcome to Healthy Minds. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Everyone is touched by psychiatric conditions, either themselves or a loved one. Do not suffer in silence. With help, there is hope. Today on Healthy Minds.
We've found that borderline personality disorder is one of the most stigmatized disorders out there amongst health professionals. And a lot of health professionals have been taught that it's not favorable or good prognosis to tell someone that they have borderline personality disorder.
It's important for people to seek help because really, with help, this is a fully treatable condition and people can live full, happy, productive lives. That's today on Healthy Minds. Welcome to Healthy Minds. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Borderline personality disorder. What exactly is it, and how do we treat this condition? Today I speak with leading expert Dr. Lois Choi Kane about borderline personality disorder. Lois, thank you for joining us today.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation to talk about borderline personality disorder.
And I want to jump right in and ask you to tell us an overview. What is borderline personality disorder?
Borderline personality disorder is a prevalent, potentially disabling, and sometimes fatal disorder that's actually very treatable. It really encompasses a broad territory of psychological vulnerabilities spanning emotion, problems of dysregulation and instability, as well as behavioral discontrol that we oftentimes see manifested as self-harm or suicidality. A lot of people now are focusing on how the interpersonal problems of borderline personality disorder, that is, its interpersonal hypersensitivity, leads to severe ups and downs in one's relationship world, meaning that sometimes things are all good and feeling like there could be no wrong in the relationship, to plummeting to a state of blame and despair that the relationship is causing all the problems that a person has in their life. Related to this are problems of identity functioning, meaning that one's sense of oneself is negative, unstable, and very prone to being shaped by environmental influences. So these combinations of relational instabilities plus identity disturbance really fuel the emotional dysregulation and the behavioral control we see in the disorder.
I want to ask you a little bit about when do these symptoms first arise? What's the typical course that occurs for people who experience borderline personality disorder?
There are many diverse roads to developing borderline personality disorder. Part of it is biological, meaning that sometimes genetics has a strong influence over the tendency that people will have for impulsivity and emotional instability, and they might just be endowed with more sensitive temperaments. And when people who are born sensitive in both an emotional and interpersonal sense interact with adversity in their environment, sometimes this is in severe forms like trauma, that might create a condition in which the stress in one's life overwhelms the capacity to cope. So when someone is overwhelmed in their capacity to cope, they act in ways that are out of control. And then what happens is that their social environment might respond in ways that cause a person to feel worse and not better. And then a vicious cycle occurs where someone is acting in ways that are very difficult to cope with and understand, and the environment is transacting or responding in ways that that person finds very stressful and rejecting.
Almost a snowball effect.
Exactly. It's a snowball effect. And that's where there's some hope, because you can actually intervene on multiple levels to disrupt this cycle.
I want to talk about some of the treatment. Tell us, what are the modes of treatment that have been found to be effective?
Well, the good news, Jeff, is that for a long time, people thought that borderline personality disorder was untreatable because they were using treatments that were built for more general problems that people without borderline personality disorder also have, things like depression and anxiety. Then, when they found that people with borderline personality disorder weren't responding as usual to those treatments and therefore they were deemed treatment resistant, they started trying to adjust treatments to really address these core relationship and emotional sensitivities that people with borderline personality disorder have. And when they focus those treatments on these core problems of BPD, the patients actually did better in most outcomes compared to those patients who were in these treatments that are for usual patients that don't have personality problems.